According to Bernadette Perry, over 300 billion hours a week are devoted to gaming, and with this ambiguous presence of mobile technologies, gaming is now mobile. A well-developed video game will keep a player enthralled for hours on end. What if educators could engage learners the way that video games engage players? This quote was taken from Gamifying French Language Learning, a case study examining a Quest-based augmented reality mobile learning tool. If learning could be gamified, then that process would not be so daunting and would be discovered as fun. So I have come up with the language game. In this first-person perspective game, the player searches and discovers common items around their virtual house. The game will start out asking what language you would like to learn. In the case of simplicity, the only two choices here are English and Spanish. Next, the player is transported to their virtual room, where they can begin to interact with objects in the room. As they click on various objects, a verbal cue will alert the player as to what it is in the language chosen. In the case of the next few slides, it shows the player clicking on the chair, and the verbal cue is silla, again with bed, and window, and picture frame. Once they have successfully interacted with everything, the door will unlock and the player will be allowed to advance to the next room. At this point, the game becomes a bit more challenging. What happens is when the player clicks on objects previously clicked on, such as the chair, a screen will pop up, testing the player's reading ability. As you can see here, the question is in English, asking the player what it was they selected. At this point, the player then chooses between three answers. In my example, the player chose wrong, and is prompted to go back and re-explore their bedroom to discover the answer. So, the goal of the game is to become more familiar with objects through another language. The antagonizing force in the game will be correctly identifying and answering questions pertaining to the language at hand. As I mentioned earlier, the perspective of the game will be a 3D, first-person exploration game. There are a number of development risks involved in the creation of the game. The first one that stands out is that students have never looked at gamifying learning in an interactive way. Next is having the proper resources and making sure the object specified is correctly written and verbally accurate. The last is the time and resources in making the artwork for the virtual space the player will play in. And these are the citations I used for construction of this presentation.